wrote this down because I didn't know if I would be able to remember everything that I want to say, and I really have some things I want to say. Well, they said we don't have to mess with the mic.
Okay.
Wait, I'm going to switch.
Like me.
You're
Okay,
taller than
okay.
me, so I'm going to switch sides. What I want to do is tell you what I'm grateful for, because the thing that I keep falling back on is what a great life Arlie had. I'm grateful for his son, Chris. I'm grateful that all of the joy that he had and how proud he was of you. And he said the best day of his life was when Christopher won the karate tournament. And he had to pull over because he was so excited. He didn't feel like he could drive. Okay, yeah,
Come on over.
It does sound a little better. When Arlie and I were married, we were on an adventure together that included hiking Half Dome in Yosemite, rollerblading, season passes to Heavenly, riding our bikes on Iron Horse Trail. MS took all of that away from us. He had primary progressive MS, and it moves faster than other types of MS, and it was moving through his body like a freight train. And I used to tell Arlie recently, there is a monster in the closet, and it's called MS. And Arlie used to pray for God to use him as the tip of the sword to right the injustices and stand up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves, which he did on a daily basis. But once he had MS, he said a child could knock him over, so he had to switch up the prayer. And he started praying that God would use us as a paintbrush to paint a beautiful picture to lead people to him. But then he said we only did a brush stroke, and then everybody else filled it in. I had no idea how many wonderful people there were in the world. I'll share a secret with you. When I was growing up, I thought everybody was kind of rotten. I would never have known this if it weren't for MS and cancer. When Arlie was diagnosed with cancer, it snapped him out of the depression that MS had him in, because he didn't want to die like his mother did. And when Bridgette created Arlie's Angels, and they presented us with a vacation, only because she contacted me on Facebook and said, Shari, I keep telling Arlie, me and the community, we want to raise money and send you on vacation. And he keeps saying, no, if you want to do something for me, what you're going to do is make me the #1 fundraiser for Children's Hospital. And she said, and I will help him with that, but can you help me out and tell me where you guys like to stay? And I said, a Surf and Sand Hotel, Laguna Beach. So when they presented the vacation, the news cameras were there. First of all, thanks to Bridgette, but when she called me, I said, I think you have to get permission for that. So she called Ken, and I think he risked his job by saying yes. So thanks for that. This began a whirlwind tour, which I imagine is what it's like when you're a finalist on The Voice. This is the show I always watch when he falls asleep, and I kind of sneak the remote away. And although he'd be snoring, I'd just, start switching the channel. He'd be like, what are you doing? I'm like, you were asleep. No, I wasn't. I'm like, then how come you were snoring? His biggest fear, and those of you who've known him for a long time know that it was public speaking. And I know that's hard to believe, the way that he was so loud at Costco. But he said that when you add a stage to it and you're not at Costco, it's a whole different thing. But, oh, that's his song. He was so passionate about raising money for UCSF Children's Hospital that he said, I can't pass up this opportunity because this could raise more money. So this whole thing kind of awakened the giant within. And most of the time, I had to go up with him to help him walk. And I was terrified because A, you never knew what was going to come out of his mouth. And B, Honestly, I had no idea if we were going to make it up there without falling. But then being up there was like the prime spot because I would watch a miracle unfold in the faces as people laughed and cried and then laughed again. I'm like, yes, he didn't blow it. He knocked it out of the park. We no longer went skiing, rollerblading, hiking, but we were on a new adventure of the heart. The other miracle for me was to witness day in and day out Costco employees and members basically lifting Arlie up every day at work, from helping him to get his wallet out of his backpack, to stopping him from a fall, most of which were conspiracies when he did fall, which I'm finding out more and more even today. Because before he even got up off the ground, he'd make everybody promise to never tell me what happened. Once there was this big egg on his elbow, and I'm like, that looks weird. Did something happen? And later I found out he had fallen. Okay, let me find my place here. Oh yeah, okay. And thank you for zipping up his zipper, Denise. I told him it's okay. I trust her. And she's one of the people who lives in San Ramon that you never dated before me. And thank you for bringing him home on a rough day to me. You had no idea what you were in store for. And practically carrying him out of the car. Arlie said he came home with more makeup on than me from the hugs and kisses he'd get every day at work. And the kids who would run up to him and give him hugs made his heart want to burst. I also got to witness young men, his right-hand men, and we're talking 15 to 20-year-olds, working with Arlie on home improvements, which was his other passion, which you've heard about. They brought his blueprints to life that I heard about all morning while we were getting ready, and I'm trying to think, I have to remember his phone, I have to remember this, I have to remember that, we have to get to work on time. And he's like, honey, I figured it out, we're gonna do the drawers in a different way. I'm like, okay, that's great, can you just tell your guys? They built shelving in the garage, our built-in closets, which people are continuing to be impressed about if you want to come check them out. Tricked out a cabinet in the laundry room for me. Arlie was like a child going to Disneyland when working on projects, and he did that until just a few days before he passed away. And anyone who's worked with Arlie knows he's particular. I'd hear him giving exacting directions, step-by-step instructions. Then I'd also hear them all laughing in the garage. Not sure what he was saying, but it was probably better that I was in the house. And thank you to his Costco family for making him feel welcome, giving him an outlet to be creative and productive and provide for his family, and that meant the world to him. Thank you for honoring him for his fundraising achievements with the Costco President's Award. When things like this happened, we'd call my dad, and my dad's Jewish father, and when he was proud of Arlie, without having a bunch of degrees, it just meant so much to him. On when Arlie received the Hero Award, my dad had said, tell me when you want me to fly up, and I told him, and he arranged his flight, and then Arlie called him on the sly, because he knew I would say, don't do that to my dad. But he called him on the sly and said, instead, can you come up in 3 days? Because I want you to be there when I get this award. So my dad's one to plan, so he was a little stressed out about that. We'll put it lightly. So he's like, this is the last time I'm doing this. So then he came up, he flew up, and he was there, and Arlie got a standing ovation. And my dad told everybody about that speech. He was so proud of him. So he said, thank you, I'm so glad I came. I'm like, wow, you really made it easy on me, Dad. Regarding his doctors and nurses and the whole staff at the infusion center, this was his party crew. He'd roll into the infusion center. By the way, the admin was like, okay, wait, Arlie, I'll get you checked in. Zoom, he went back to the back. I'm like, honey, I think you're supposed to wait here. Go into the room and start working the room. And he'd start telling everybody, some people were, sleepy, they're getting their infusions. And he's like, hey, don't get Cindy, she throws needles at me like I'm a dartboard. And I'm over there looking at Cindy like, he's kidding, right? And then when they gave him his shot, he'd be like, ow, ow. He'd always ask for something a little more exciting in his IV and told them they really need to revamp and get more like Starbucks. Thank you to my family for having adventures with him on his Segway on the beach. This was glorious and terrifying all at the same time. Because the beach, it slants like this, and the Segway is all about leaning. And you don't want to get it in the water. As cool as it is, it's not waterproof. Thank you for babysitting him when I flew to Colorado, and I'm glad you survived that. Thank you to his Facebook family for giving him a forum to express himself. What I learned with MS that it was simply not possible to get through on our own. But with all of you, we made it, and we even thrived. You made it a glorious adventure, which is why Arlie would say, and I'm sure most of you heard him say this, I thank God for MS and cancer, because without them, none of this would have happened. Beautiful. You're very beautiful. I got scared. I thought I was on page 1.
Oh, you did great. I can't believe you did that. It was amazing. I'm so proud of you. My name's Bridgette Loughnane, and I am one of Arlie's angels. And I wrote some stuff, but in true style, kind of like Arlie, sometimes I just go off the cuff, so I'm going to go back and forth a little bit. And Pastor Heidi had asked me to really specifically say how Arlie and I had met. And I met Arlie at Costco. I grew up in Danville since 1988. So Arlie was always at Costco. He was like the flour and the rice, and there was Arlie, except for he's a little more exciting, or maybe more like the hot sauce. And I always saw him, and you're in a hurry. I have 4 kids, and we'd always be checking out. And before, when he was at the, what do you call that at the end where you, he'd do the smiley faces. Yeah, the receipt checker. When he was doing the checking of the receipts, and he'd always make the cute faces, and my kids would love it. And, it's kind of like you're going through the motions. You're doing that at Costco every time. And then it was one time about 3 years ago that I saw Arlie, and he just didn't look so good. And he'd always been smiling, and he was always happy and just giving back in so many different ways. But I stopped for a second, and this is all God, because I was in a hurry, but we are all in hurries all the time. But I stopped and I asked him, and I said, are you okay? You seem a little bit off today. And that's when he looked at me and he said, do you believe in God? And I said, absolutely. He said, would you pray for me today at 4 o'clock? I said, sure. And he said, I'm going to the doctor. I'm going to find out if I have cancer. And I thought, wow, for somebody to be so open and honest with me like that, I went home and I just couldn't shake this feeling that I was getting. And the next morning I woke up and I called Costco at 9:30 because I knew they opened at 10 and I wanted to try to catch Arlie. So I asked for Arlie, and they're like, Arlie? I need to talk to him. He doesn't get calls here. So I started talking to him. I said, hi, Arlie, my name's Bridgette. I met you yesterday, and I wanted to call and see what happened at the doctor. And he told me it was cancer. And he, in the same sentence, just kept saying, but it's going to be okay, and I'm going to be fine, and, I'm okay with it, and just so accepting of the news. but I couldn't get over it. That's when I posted something on Facebook, and a bunch of us kind of got together, and that's when we decided to start Arlie's Angels. And as some of the news crews had it wrong, that we were actually giving them a vacation they couldn't afford, let me keep that, let's just get that in check. Because it was something where I knew that if I was suffering from an illness like cancer, I would just want to get away from all my friends and family and just go away and be with my sunshine and Tinkerbell and do something just with us. And so that's when I thought, let's do some kind of a trip, because if we could do something to get him out of his day-to-day, maybe that would bring some joy to him. But he knew, he had a feeling, because he saw me. I was talking to Stacy, and I would be in there talking to Robert, and then, and then Ken, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, just shopping, just getting my stamps from the supervisors, But he knew, he's like, you're planning something, and I don't like it. And I'm like, and I remember he came up to me and said, another time, he kind of, come and grab my shoulder, and he was like, look, I don't know what you're doing, but if it's anything that involves money or something for me, I don't want it. I want everything to go to the kids. That was Arlie. Can I steal water from church? Is that acceptable? I'm forgiven. Thank you, Pastor Heidi. So, that was the day where I looked at him and I said, you know what, Arlie? Sometimes it's not about you. And I said, you need to just shut up and let this happen, because it's going to happen. And I promise you I'll help you raise money for those kids, but this is for your wife. It's not for you. And so he actually listened to me and stopped talking about it. So the day that we decided to present the gift, again, this was God. In my head, I remember I was in my robe. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning, and we were going in maybe 2 hours. I hadn't even gotten dressed or anything. And I just kind of had God just nudging me, saying, hey, you know what, this is a good story. Let's just reach out and share this with a couple of news editors. So I did. And then I called Shari, and I said, okay, guess what? We're going to have some news people show up. So this is going to be great. And she's like, I think you have to clear that with corporate. And I was like, what are you talking about? So then I talked to some ladies in the office there in Danville, and they're like, okay, this has never happened. Costco does not allow cameras inside. This is like a major policy. And I'm like, oh. So I said, well, you know what? I'm really sorry, but in true Arlie form, my heart got bigger than my head, so you guys are going to have to figure this one out. I don't know what happened, and again, Ken, thank you, because it happened. And so Arlie saw me earlier kind of like walking to the back, and he's like, something's happening. I'm like, Arlie, just do your job and get out of my business. But what I think the coolest thing is, when I shared with the news people, I said, look, here's the story, but it's not really the real story, because there's a whole story behind this story. And that's what I really want you to focus on, because just wait. I said, as soon as we give him this little basket of, fun stuff and tell him what's happening, I guarantee what's going to come out of his mouth. He's going to use this as a platform and talk about how he wants to raise money for kids. So you just wait. And sure enough, it was the very, first thing was, thank you, but I really want to raise money for the kids. I'm like, okay, just breathe in for a minute, Arlie. But that was Arlie, and he was just such an amazing person. And Arlie, he literally changed my life forever. He never complained, to me at least. I don't know about you, honey. He didn't care about money unless you were going to donate, and that was important to him. He lived a very simple yet exhilarating life. He didn't really care if you were white, black, purple, brown, pink. It didn't matter what color your skin was. It didn't matter if you're rich or poor, fat or thin. He loved everybody the same. Except for maybe a little more for Shari and Tinkerbell, of course, and his family. I've had a really difficult time these past 11 days, and I was crying to my mom about Arlie just a couple of days ago. And she told me how Arlie's not hurting anymore or in pain, and he's in the very best place he could possibly be. Now, I've thought about this over and over, and here's what I've come up with. So, God needed Arlie more in heaven than we needed him here on earth, which I still can't understand how that's happening. But I just pray when I get to heaven that I get to be an angel with Arlie. And although you know what happened, as you were saying about Arlie operating the gates, not only is he operating the gates, but I just know that the Lord said to Arlie, you're bypassing the angel line. You're going to be training all of these angels in heaven how to be Arlie-like, how to be a real Arlie angel. So let's talk about some of the good times, more of them. So right after the news picked up this great story about Arlie with, wanting to raise money for the kids, he was so excited. And I still have his voicemail on my phone from the very first day because he was so happy. And he was talking about how they're going to have to build him a bigger house because his head was so big that he couldn't even get through the garage because he was just on cloud nine. He was so happy. But a few days later, he called and said, I came up with this great idea. And I'm like, okay, what is it? So he's like, I'm going to climb Half Dome. Now, at that time, he wasn't in his wheelchair, so I thought, okay, this will be interesting.
One working leg, though.
With one working leg, yes. And so I just said, sure, let's talk about how to make it happen, and we'll get it done. 2 days later, he calls, hey, Bridgette, let's not do that thing. I think I was just a little crazy. I said, oh, okay, well, we'll figure out some other stuff. But he didn't have any limits on his dreams. And I think that was such a beautiful thing for such a beautiful man. He made fun of himself, and he never took himself too seriously, as we've heard. And that's one of the most amazing qualities to me about Arlie. I remember hanging out with him when he was greeting people at Costco one day, but I didn't want to get him fired, so I was trying to pretend like I was trying to find my card in my purse. And if somebody walked by but got nervous because Arlie was saying hi, some people how they are, he'd be like, hey, that's a great shirt you got there, I really like it. And they, keep walking, don't make eye contact, keep walking, And then a couple more people would come by, and then he'd be like, hey, I love those socks are great, and people would just kind of look at him like, who the hell is this guy? But he didn't care because he wanted to make an impact on every single person. And the kids that came into Costco just to see Arlie, including my kids, he would make them feel like they were the most amazing kids in the universe. And that's what Arlie did. He had a gift. He had a passion for life, and everyone who knew Arlie knew that. Then there was the way that he talked about Shari, his sunshine, and Tinkerbell. Now, he thought Shari walked on water, and he told every single person about that. He would always tell me that he's married to the most beautiful woman on earth, and he wasn't sure how he was able to get you as his wife. And he would always say that. He'd say, I don't know why God gave me Shari. I'm not deserving of her. Of course, I thought Arlie walked on water and would reassure him that God knew what he was doing when he put Shari and Arlie together. Arlie turned his diagnosis of MS and cancer into a platform to help other people. And he wanted to do that because he said to me that he couldn't imagine any parent having to watch their child be sick. And he said that he couldn't imagine to see these kids suffering and know that there was no cure being in research, and that's why he wanted to raise so much money. And it really took a toll on his body. He was really tired, and he was exhausted, and I can't even imagine. But he was on the high of his life. He had a huge purpose, and he wasn't going to let his health get in the way. Arlie made his mission to leave a legacy in this world, and he sure has. And I know right now he's going, why are you making such a big fuss about me? Because he really didn't like that.
But he told us to have a big party.
Okay, but we're having a big party.
And he did want a lot of people there, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
When I get where I'm going, on the far side of the sky, the first thing that I'm gonna do is spread my wings and fly. I'm gonna land beside a lion and run my fingers through his mane. Or I might find out what it's like to ride a drop of rain. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, there'll be only happy tears. I will share the sins and struggles I've carried all these years. I'll leave my heart wide open. I will love and have no fear. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, don't cry for me down here. I'm gonna walk with my granddaddy, and he'll match me step for step. And I'll tell him how I missed him every minute since he left. Then I'll hug his neck. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, there'll be only happy tears. I will share the sins and struggles I've carried all these years. I'll leave my heart wide open. I will love and have no fear. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, don't cry for me down here. So much pain and so much darkness in this world we stumble through. All these questions I can't answer, and so much work to do. But when I get where I'm going, and I see my Maker's face, I'll stand forever in the light of His amazing grace. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, there'll be only happy tears. I will share the sins and struggles I've carried all these years. I'll leave my heart wide open. I will love and have no fear. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, don't cry for me down here.
Good afternoon. My name is Vince Felix, and my wife, Victoria, and our two youngest children, Dwayne and Adriana, we are great friends of Arlie and Shari Smith. I see this word up here, celebration, and I look out, and it looks like we're ready for a nice luau, a party. You guys look amazing, which is exactly what Arlie wanted. Beautiful colors. wearing your Hawaiian shirts and the leis and stuff. This is an actual Arlie shirt that he gave me. And I think some people raided his closet at home. So I didn't steal, this was a gift, just to let you know. But I want to share with you that some stuff about my friend. Over the years, we saw Arlie's health decline. But what was amazing was that his spirit did not decline with it. I believe it grew stronger. In fact, I think Arlie accomplished more sitting in a wheelchair than he ever did standing up. Now, on the surface, that makes absolutely no sense at all, not in this world. But I believe from a spiritual perspective, it makes all the sense in the world. There's a psalm in the Bible, Psalm 37:4 says, "Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desire of your heart." Arlie took delight in his relationship with Jesus. He followed Jesus, and he totally loved Jesus' heart for people. Even though we're celebrating Arlie's life today, I also want to be very honest and real, if I can. You see, as wonderful as everyone says Arlie was, and we've heard about Arlie's angels, but Arlie was no angel. Not my friend. He wore his heart on his sleeve and did not have a filter, for better or worse. And he was not necessarily the most patient guy around. And I believe God has a tremendous sense of humor, because you see, even when God's refining us, he'll use humor in situations, and he'll use our weaknesses to shape us. And as Arlie was taking delight in following Jesus, God introduced him to my son, Dwayne. Now, Dwayne was the last of Arlie's right-hand men that spoke. And Dwayne, as you heard, would do projects for Arlie, the shelves, the backyard, and such. And Arlie was very, very detailed. You had to do it his way, step by step. But Arlie met his match in Dwayne, because Dwayne thinks, you know, all young men, they kind of think, well, we know how to do things. And Dwayne and Arlie would butt heads time and time again. Many times these projects would end with some raised voices and some colorful language, which I will not share with the children here. And Arlie would go to Shari and unload on her. Then he'd talk to me about it, and Dwayne would too. And Arlie shared with me that the reason he got so frustrated was because when he saw Dwayne, he saw himself. And I thought that was kind of curious and a little bit frightening. I'm just saying. But Arlie and Dwayne had this really special, wonderful relationship. And I think God was refining both of them during these work projects. And in the end, they worked things out. The similarity between Arlie and Dwayne reached a special point for our family last week. A week ago, yesterday, see, Dwayne volunteers with for youth with special needs. And Dwayne, excuse me, was honored by the East Bay Leadership Council for his philanthropic work. It's a great honor. And as we sat at our tables a week ago yesterday, there was a list of past winners. And on the list, in 2015, another previous winner was Arlie Smith. So here we were. 48 hours after Arlie goes to heaven, the young man that reminded himself so much of him is following in his footsteps. Now, when the group Arlie's Angels presented Arlie and Shari with the great gift, Arlie said the following. This is his quote. "Look at these people. I'm richer than Bill Gates and the guy from Facebook. those guys on Shark Tank, put them all together,